welcome to my channel. My name's Lorelei and my channel is about wellness, metaphysical, spirituality and mythology. And today I'm going to talk about my gluten-free diet. So I started a gluten-free diet about 8 months ago due to some reasons that I was considering if I was gluten intolerant. And after cutting out gluten from my diet, I definitely would say that I am. I have spoke with a doctor since that time who also agreed that I am gluten intolerant, and she was so nice and helpful, especially as she was also gluten intolerant, so she understood what it is like to be that way and was definitely very helpful in that she recommended a celiac test, but only if I felt up to doing that, because she understood how difficult it is to even eat a small amount of gluten when you're intolerant, and the reactions that I get are so severe, and she said that she understands that that's really awful to make me eat gluten again just to be tested for celiac. So I have not done the celiac test. I feel like that's a personal decision, and I've heard a bit in a gluten-free community about doctor shaming and that you should definitely get celiac tested, and looking down on people that don't get celiac tested when you might be. And I just really feel like it's a personal decision as to whether you want to do that or not. And I don't feel like anybody should be shamed for any medical condition and what they choose to do about it or not choose to do about it. And my personal choice is to not be tested at the current time. But I would personally recommend that if you're starting a gluten-free diet, it could be a good thing to get tested before you cut out gluten, because if you eliminate gluten and then need to reintroduce it, I think that that's the most difficult part. So if I had been celiac tested before I did my diet change, I probably would have done it that way. But now that I've not been eating gluten for 8 months and then to eat some gluten, I'm just really not interested in doing that. So that's my personal choice, and my recommendation to anybody starting a diet would be to do that first. So, but definitely there should be no shame in whether you do or don't, or what your choices are there. Some people also have a really difficult time in eliminating gluten and having such a drastic diet change, and I also feel like that is totally understandable. And if you have an odd day where you go to eat a donut because you just can't take it anymore, then I just don't think there should be any shame about that either. And it's a really difficult thing to change your diet in such a drastic way for numerous reasons. It affects a lot of things, even your home life. To eliminate gluten when other family members are not eliminating gluten can be a difficult situation. Or to go out to restaurants and be in social settings where you are going to friends' houses or entertaining or anything like that, and then there's a gluten offering and you don't know how to say no. There's just so many factors that even I didn't think about before I started my gluten-free diet, and how difficult some aspects would be. One thing that I had a lot of trouble with, and I've heard the term food paralysis, where I just, after a couple of months of my diet, I felt really just in shock. The sort of realization that I definitely cannot eat gluten, and I need to not eat that probably ever again. And I just was in shock about it. To what do I make myself for dinner or for lunch or even breakfast or snacks? And I just was, the only word to say it is shock, or as I've heard the term, food paralysis. So my way to get around this was to start HelloFresh, And this was really, really helpful to me. I did that for about 3 months, and it just really kick-started me in cooking again. And just simple things, the simple instructions and picture recipes saying just start with some salt and pepper and some olive oil, and it just made all of the stress. I didn't need to walk around the grocery store and read the packets of everything, because I could sit at home online and research. The HelloFresh meals state on there whether they are gluten-free or not, and I just found that really, really helpful. So I really needed that for a couple of months there to help me just really learn how to eat again. And yeah, so that was really, really helpful. I feel like with my gluten-free diet that it has been, if not the biggest change in my life, especially when it comes to my health, all the way beneficial. I just really feel like I was starting to eat all over again. Like, I had so much trouble my whole life with food, and anybody who knows me personally would understand where I'm coming from, and it's difficult to even speak about it without getting emotional. But I just had a really difficult time right from when I was first introduced to food. As a small child, I could not eat without vomiting or feeling sick constantly, and having childhood arthritis and all the different aspects that I had to deal with, going to the doctors and being questioned at even 5 years old or something if I was bulimic, and having the doctors discussing that I'm too young to have bulimia because after every meal I was being unwell, and it was just really, really awful. And for my family to need to manage that all the time, and myself, and to be at situations where I needed to eat and I just would rather starve myself because I felt so ill from food all the time. And it was just a really difficult thing for me all the time. It just was always a very difficult area for me, and it's usually something that brings people together and brings people a lot of joy. And I'm not going to say that I didn't have really nice meal times or events and things like that, but I just was always different and had difficulty in that way, and it's just entirely gone. Apart from the fact that, as I said, now I might be out eating and I need to say that I can't eat with somebody because what they're offering me is gluten. So one of the main things that I noticed, apart from not feeling unwell anymore after eating, is my increased energy when I have a meal. And so it's like food is being the fuel that it should be for my body, and I have a meal and I feel better and I get energy from that meal, instead of eating a meal and then feeling really, really unwell, even to the point that I needed to sleep for hours after lunchtime and dinner, or feeling just so unwell, being physically ill after having a meal. I have no longer had that. The reflux or the nausea, the headaches, everything has gone in that area. And not only that, but food tastes better. So I almost feel like in the book Eat, Pray, Love, where she is going through a divorce and finding her love and her passion for food and everything else in her life again, that's really how I feel. I feel like I've divorced myself from gluten, and now I just have this new passion for food and for life, and it's really amazing. I'm not going to say that it's all been easy, because that has been difficult, and a lot of it is to do with just thinking about how unwell that I was, and how in my 30s it got so dramatically worse for me. And even just looking back at photos and just knowing in myself how unwell that I felt at that time. My immune system was down, my psoriasis was so bad that I was having allergic reactions to everything. I had my hair falling out. I had to shave my hair at one point due to an allergic reaction. I had so many different symptoms that have all just completely disappeared. And I do understand that a lot of my symptoms are so severe that it sounds more like celiac, but as I said, I can't say whether I'm celiac or not. I have only been told that I definitely have severe gluten intolerance. And some of my health issues were just so upsetting to me that I even have some kind of almost post-traumatic stress disorder from it, nightmares about my health and how bad it was. And I have dreams about eating gluten and then waking up panicking and realizing that it's only a dream. I guess it is just such a big deal in my life to have eliminated gluten, and I didn't realize at my 2-week update how big of a deal it was going to be. So there has been the odd time where I've accidentally eaten gluten or something that has said it may contain gluten, and then I've had a reaction from that. And I feel like the best way when you accidentally eat gluten, there are certain things that can help, but it still is an awful thing to happen. So the best way to recover from that is to fast as much as you can, but also it's really important to eat a lot of fruits and vegetables and probiotics, and to rest your body and allow yourself to recover. So reading labels and reading gluten-free packaging is something that is really important, because I didn't realize myself that when something says gluten-free, it doesn't even always mean that there is no gluten in there, because the gluten-free label is allowed on things that have under a percentage of gluten in there. So there's such things as gluten-free wheat, which is still somehow has the gluten taken out of it. And I had a really bad reaction from eating something that was labeled gluten-free, and then after half an hour of feeling so unwell, reading the packet and seeing the ingredients of gluten-free wheat, and then it took me 5 days after that to become better. And by 5 days of becoming better, I mean I was pretty much unavailable for 5 days. I couldn't move, I couldn't lift things, I could hardly use my hands, I could only really do the bare minimum each day. I had no energy. I felt like I was going to vomit nearly all the time for 5 days. And it's also shocking and upsetting to know that that's how I felt constantly my whole life for 34 years almost. So yes, if you are going to start a gluten-free diet and it's for health reasons or even other reasons, you should definitely check out the packaging and be aware that if it says it may contain gluten, you can have a reaction from that, and it's really your risk as to whether you still want to eat that or not. One of the best pieces of advice that I had when I first started my diet was from my mum, who was lovely and offered me some advice that if you are looking for something gluten-free and you're really stressing about it, then just eat fruit and vegetables and just know that they are gluten-free for sure. The other thing that I have found really helpful is to join gluten-free communities on Facebook, and this has really helped me to become a lot more informed about the diet. And if you have questions, there's other people there that also have the same questions, and there's a lot of recipe ideas, and it's just been really helpful for me to join these communities. It also helps you to not feel so alone and to realize that there's a lot of other people out there who are the same as you. There's also apps that you can download that say whether a restaurant is gluten-free or celiac friendly, and I've also found that very helpful. It's best to research when you are going somewhere, the restaurants in the area, and whether they offer gluten-free, and to really study the menus and things before you get there. So it seems like there were phases during my detox as to how my diet and my body was going, which was quite interesting actually. But it was almost that after 3 months, a lot of my awful symptoms of dizziness and nausea and fatigue had disappeared. And then I went to get myself a Thai wellness lymph node massage, which is a detoxing massage. And you should be aware that if you are going to get one of these massages, you should research it first, because it can be not good for certain people with certain health conditions, so that is something to look out for. But I did this massage, and then it was almost like it really accelerated my detoxing, which is what it's meant to do. And there were just symptoms that just came out really rapidly. So my skin got really bad, and my mouth even had such bad ulcers, and it was all around my mouth, inside my mouth, everywhere. It was really awful and really difficult to eat or drink for some days, and it was quite shocking to see all these things happen. But I just had to trust that it was a part of the process, and I feel much better now. And many people get health remedies done that have these kind of symptoms, and you just need to sort of bear with it. Sometimes it gets worse before it gets better. But again, it's not something that I would recommend for everyone if you have certain health conditions. So I got this massage at about 3 months gluten-free, and it really took until about 6 months. After that, for those 3 months afterwards, there was certain points, I will say, where I just thought, this is just so awful and I can't take it anymore, and I was feeling better and now I'm not feeling better, and is it even worth it? And I was just sort of waiting for that moment where I just felt really good. And it's funny because I've read that 6 months is where, between 3 to 6 months is where you can feel much better and have totally eliminated gluten when you are detoxing from it. And so I had that moment at 3 months, and then I also had that moment at exactly 6 months. So at exactly 6 months I felt much better, just almost instantly at the 6 month mark. It was really funny. So I just felt really great after that. I also started a exercise regime at a certain point during my detoxing phase, and I feel like this also accelerated things. And so there was just these moments where it was almost like I could feel the toxins really being drawn out of my body. And so that was definitely after my lymph node massage and after I started an exercising regime where I just really upped my yoga routines, and I also began a weight training or strength training 2 times a week. I will be honest and say that I have not been exercising much over the last 2 months, as it was summer holidays here and we went away on a holiday, and just none of those things happened. So I do look forward to getting back into it, but I will be honest and say that I did stop exercising for a little bit here. As to whether I've lost weight or gained weight, I have been losing weight, and I have been to a personal trainer before who also taught me that one of the best ways to track your fitness level is to take measurements of your body, and I've definitely gotten a lot smaller since I have started this diet. And the most noticing where I have lost something like 7 centimeters is in my waist, and so that just shows the extreme amount of uncomfortable bloating and issues that I was having around that area. But I have got smaller everywhere, and I wouldn't say that if you are doing this for health reasons, obviously weight is important, but I think that if you follow that too much, it can cause issues in a gluten environment, because once you cut it out, if you have things like celiac, it can mean that before you were gluten-free, your body was not absorbing nutrition the way that other people's bodies absorb nutrition. So one of the first things that can happen is that you will actually start to gain a lot of muscle, or even gain a bit of weight, because sometimes if you're celiac, you can be very underweight because your body is not absorbing any kinds of nutrition from food. And it's interesting in the phases of my detox that in the beginning I felt like I had to eat so many fruits and vegetables. My body just was craving so much nutrition. And then at a certain point, probably around 4 or 5 months, I just felt like I really needed to eat a lot less. So it was almost as though my body was craving all these really large meals for such a long time, which I always considered, why do I feel like I need to eat so much? And why do I feel like I'm hungry all the time, even when I eat? And so even though the food was making me ill, I just felt like I needed to eat more and more. And it was possibly to do with the fact that I was not actually gaining any nutrition from anything that I was eating before, because if you have certain types of gluten intolerance, then your stomach doesn't work the way that it should, and so I probably was not actually absorbing anything from the food that I needed to be absorbing. So I know that these are difficult topics, especially for a lot of people who struggle with being celiac or have other kinds of eating disorders not related to celiac or gluten intolerance. This can be a difficult topic to talk about, eating and food. And as I said, it was always something that was difficult for me. So I understand that this can be a sensitive subject, but this video is labeled as a gluten-free diet update, and so you need to be aware that that is what we are speaking about here. Another major thing that I have noticed since not eating gluten is that my mental health has become a lot better, and I just feel very clear-headed and not so anxious all the time or cloudy in my mind. I can focus better on what I'm doing and think really clearly, and that added to having so much more energy, I just have such a better way of life now, and I'm really thankful for that. One of the things that can be upsetting when you start this kind of diet is that you feel as though you can't eat a lot of what you were eating before. And I think that it's important to be aware that you can eat most of the things that you were eating before, and you can just find these things gluten-free or make them at home yourself. Just follow the same recipes that have gluten and just switch it out for something gluten-free breadcrumbs or gluten-free flour. It just is not so difficult to do that. Actually, it just feels really difficult in the beginning, and so I've made a lot of meals that I used to eat and I still can eat now and enjoy the same things, but just gluten-free. I think that one of the other things that's very difficult when you are doing this diet is that a lot of people are not aware of gluten intolerance, and even people who work at restaurants or cafes or in a food service environment cannot be aware of it. I mean, I myself used to work in a food service industry for a while, and at no point was I aware of gluten intolerance. So I can understand how a lot of people just are not aware, and that's not their fault. It's just, it really needs to be up to you to be really careful of what you are eating. And I've become much more mindful of everything that I eat and really putting a lot of thought into every single thing that I eat, even snacks or just drinks, everything. There's so many things that you would not think that gluten is in. Drinks, sauces, soups, all just different kind of things, salad dressings, things that you need to look out for. And so every little thing now I really think about, and I think that that's actually not a bad thing, to be really mindful of what you're eating and to really think about what you're putting into your body. One of the last phases of detox that I did was a really strong fasting week where I ate really small amounts at only certain hours of the day for an entire week, just to sort of feel like I was eliminating that last part of my diet. And after this fasting, I then ate really a lot of fruits and vegetables, and that just was really great for me. So one of the things that I ate after this fasting period was a 10 vegetable soup, and I will put the recipe on screen for you here. It's almost something that I just created myself as to what I felt like eating, and this was really yummy, and I made so much of it that I could put some in the freezer, and I still have some now, and I just had some for lunch yesterday, and it still is really yummy, and I just feel like that was really needed at the time. I have even found myself that I have been able to eat a lot of the things that I was reacting to with my psoriasis before, such as fresh tomatoes, garlic, red meat. All of these three things would give me severe psoriasis reactions after I ate them, and now I have managed to reintroduce these things into my diet since I have not been eating gluten, which is a nice thing to be able to eat these things again. I also found it quite helpful to be able to eat red meat again, as in the beginning of my diet I was gluten-free and I didn't eat things such as red meat, and so my diet was very limited there for a while. I can't say I was vegan or vegetarian because I ate fish and chicken, but it was quite limiting to only eat those two types of proteins and not have gluten at the same time, and that was a difficult time for a couple of months where my diet was really limited. I actually researched that eating meat can be some kind of healing for your stomach somehow, so I started really craving it and I just reintroduced it to my diet, and I had absolutely no issues with doing that. Another thing that I made myself, which was during the summertime, was a gluten-free ice cream made from mostly frozen fruits, because I have found myself being able to eat a little bit less dairy since I have been gluten-free. That change happened over a couple of months where, as I was drinking full cream milk or eating ice cream, it just tasted so intensely creamy, and it's not that it was upsetting my stomach in any way, but I just almost couldn't handle eating or drinking something like that, so I decided to make my own ice cream and switch to low-fat milk because I find that less creamy. One other thing that I have noticed that I can't eat so much of since I've changed my diet is sugar, and I've actually had some really bad reactions the odd times where I've eaten a really large amount of sugar, which I understand is not good for anybody, but I used to be able to eat these things without too much. Well, I guess I felt ill or unwell most of the time, so eating sugar didn't make much difference. I felt unwell before and I've probably felt unwell after. Didn't really make much difference there, but now when I eat sugar, I'm in so much pain in my stomach. My stomach hurts me so bad that I need to just roll into a ball and sleep for hours. So I have started to be really cautious of eating anything that is really high in sugar. But I'm not going to say that I don't treat myself with sugary treats, and I just really recently made these Nutella muffins, which were absolutely delicious. And if you would like the recipe, please ask in the comments below and I will share that with you. But I was actually scared as I was eating them because I made 2 different batches. I made a gluten-free one first, and then I made a regular batch for my husband and my son, and I was worried that I was eating the wrong ones because they tasted absolutely nothing like a gluten-free muffin. They tasted exactly the same as a gluten muffin, if you would call it a gluten muffin, but they just were so, I know that a lot of people don't like this word, but it's the only word that I can use. They were so moist and delicious, and they've been really, really yummy. So I did enjoy those gluten-free muffins. I would say that a lot of people comment that it's very difficult to eat gluten-free foods because they don't taste the same as the regular item. And I do understand this, and there is certain things that I've eaten that taste almost exactly the same. I've found some really great gluten-free breads and things that taste almost the same, and you do want to feel like you're not missing out. But at the same time, for me personally, I felt so unwell from eating gluten that I'm almost happy that it doesn't taste the same, because if it tasted the same, then it means that I'm eating something that was making me really, really sick, and I don't enjoy that. So that's a personal thing, that I'm happy when something tastes different, because then I know for sure that it's gluten-free. As you do get further into your gluten-free diet, you will become aware that a lot of the foods that you can eat are the same as what you could eat before, and you don't totally need to miss out on things. There's definitely a lot of delicious meals that you can still make for yourself and for your family. But I am aware that it's a very difficult change to make, and I think that any change can be quite difficult, but often change is for the better, and I have found nothing but positive things from becoming gluten-free. So just to recap on the points of this video that I feel are important, are to become aware of reading labels and what they mean, and that gluten-free doesn't always mean gluten-free, and may contain gluten is a serious label to think about. If you are going to go out to eat, then really look at the restaurant that you're going to before you go there, just to save a lot of fuss while you are out, because you already have things ready to go that you know you feel safe to eat. If you are going to start a gluten-free diet and there is a chance that you could be celiac, it can be important to get tested before you start your diet. As I said, for the reason that it can be difficult to eat something gluten when you've eliminated it and you've realized that it's making you feel really sick to eat it. It can be not a nice thing to gluten just to be tested. There is another thing to be aware of, that if you have eliminated gluten from your diet for a longer time, it can be very difficult to pick up gluten intolerance. Even if you've eaten a small amount of gluten before your test, it can affect it that your main diet is gluten-free, and then you get tested afterwards. That can also cause issues. I am aware of a test that can be done, sort of a genetic test that you can do through the post these days, that can tell you if you are gluten intolerant without eating gluten. So that could be something to look at if you feel like getting tested after you've already stopped eating gluten. Become a part of communities and join apps and things that can help you in your gluten-free journey. And just really know to give yourself grace if you're having a gluten-free diet and you accidentally eat gluten. Don't be too hard on yourself, and give your body time to heal from that. So that's all from me for today, and thank you for joining me on my gluten-free diet update. I hope that there's been some tips here today to help you in your journey, and if you also have any tips for me, then share them in the comments down below. Please like and subscribe if you like my video, because it really helps my channel. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you next time. So thank you. Bye.